when we look out at the world, I mean, I personally do keep up with the news. I don't watch it on television, but I keep up with it from other ways as much as I can. Like, is it things going well or things going poorly? Are we in a terrible crisis? Are we in a golden age? I mean, what is going on? It sort of seems like you could see it all these different ways. And there's a certain amount of choice of what our attitude is toward what we call, quote unquote, the world. And I say quote unquote because it's pretty well known in a lot of spiritual teachings that the world is more or less a projection of our own mind. I mean, that's one of the teachings of Buddha and many enlightened masters, that there's no just fixed thing out there called the world that just has its own defined constancy. It's very much a function of what our thoughts are and our beliefs and how we see things and how groups of people see things together. So I've asked myself, so in this year, 2021, are things going well? Are they kind of on the way up? Are the crises about to destroy us? Which you could also hear that from many perspectives. But what those people reminded me of is that it has a lot to do with just what we believe it is. There is no monolithic way the world is. There's no fixed thing that it's doing well or not doing well. So if you really believe that you are an emanation of your divine transmission, and we are now on the new earth, this new fifth dimensional earth is already here, and we're already in this time of ascension, then that is what it is. Because I totally feel that that's true. So then you could say, yeah, but what about all the suffering in the world and people who are, I really do believe there's a lot of people who are tremendously suffering, and sometimes I feel like I am still at times in my own way. What is that about then? If the new earth is here, this fifth dimensional earth that's full of light, that's already ascending into this high level of advanced consciousness is already here, then what's it about that there's so many people that are suffering? And that's a really huge question, and something that's important for us to address in whatever way we can. And I'm not going to try to explain it all right here in this situation, but just want to say that there's some very profound truths in this that we are uncovering about this. And that it seems like this shifting that's going on the planet, that there is resistance. There's many people resisting seeing the new earth, seeing and feeling what is really happening. And there's parts of me that are still resisting seeing the new earth and totally accepting what's happening. And this just has to do with how powerful the human mind is. There's a story that I had in my book that I want to repeat that came out of the Chronicles of Narnia, which was this wonderful set of 7 books written by C.S. Lewis. And ostensibly they were children's stories, but as an adult I totally love them. They have a lot of profound meanings about Christ consciousness and the struggle between the light and the dark and the nature spirits, and just great stories also. But there's one part in that book it was actually the last book, book 7 in the series, was called The Last Battle. And I remember that the story built up to the point where there was this giant war between all the dark beings that were represented kind of the dark side, and the evil and the witches and so on. And then there was the so-called light side, which is all the animals and the humans, and Aslan, who is this Christ-like lion. So anyway, this huge battle happened, and the sky was dark and storming, and there was thunder, and people were suffering and dying and screaming. And at some point the war ended, and the forces of the light won the war. And it was victorious. And at that point, the sun came out, and beautiful breezes started blowing, and the birds started singing, and there was a lot of joy and celebration that the war was over. So the children, who are the protagonists of the story, who had come in from England, the Pevensies, I remember their name, they're walking and they come to a horse stable, and there's some dwarfs in there who had previously been in the evil army. And they were just like, huddling like this, muttering and screaming, "Don't hit me, don't hurt me, back off." And the kid said, "Wait a minute, why are you doing that? The war is over. You can come out now. You're totally forgiven. We don't hold anything against you, just you're free to go." But these dwarfs refused to believe it. They kept saying, "No, get back off, don't kill us, don't hurt us," cursing and screaming. Children, "No, wait, You don't have to do this. Everything's okay. You can come out in the sunshine. And they couldn't convince the dwarfs to open their eyes and see what was actually happening. So then Aslan, this Christ-like lion, comes up and says, there's nothing you can do about those dwarfs. As long as they refuse to see what's happening, there's nothing you can do to change it. You just have to let it go. Somehow that seems like such a good analogy to what an explanation for this, all the suffering continuing to happen in the world. It's on the part of people continuing to perpetrate so many horrible things because they keep believing that they're living in a state of lack and they have to hurt others and kill others and abuse others in order to have their what they want fulfilled. And then many people continuing to be in the state of victim and perpetuating that. None of that is actually required, but it's because of the human mind we continue to hold on to those roles. So it's important for us to really know and believe that we are in this new earth now and really own this. Because if we own that, we can radiate that and help other people to get it more. And I still believe there's a lot of very practical actions needed along with shifting our consciousness. That it really service happens on many, many levels. The quantum healing work that I've been doing, which I spend quite a bit of time either doing or teaching or mentoring people in, has just gotten more and more, all I can say is miraculous. So there was one new client I had this Monday that I'll mention briefly what happened with him. I said he's a former chiropractor from the East Coast, now has another entrepreneurial business. He's very, very successful, has exceeded all his financial goals, working very, very hard. He's one of these really burly guys who lifts lots of weights and is really manly and strong and buff and has seemingly everything going for him. But the reason he set up the session with me is because he's had pain all over his body for a long time. He's actually had 3 different major joints totally replaced and was about to get this other knee replaced and hip replaced and I think one of his shoulders replaced or whatever it was. And he set up this session with me because he wanted to find if there was something he was missing in what he was doing for his own healing work. And I think he was expecting me to do some kind of microcurrent work, long distance or something like that. And so the main complaint he had was a lot of pain and this crushing feeling in his shoulders, like that they're degenerating. And he was thinking he might have to get those shoulders replaced surgically. So in the first, I think, 10 minutes of the session, I just had this insight about him that his suffering was due to self-condemnation. And I said this one sentence to him. I just said, you have a lot of self-judgment going on. Would you please repeat this phrase after me? I am innocent. And he said it. And then he said, oh my God, his shoulder pain went down by some huge amount, like 50-60% just disappeared, which wouldn't happen if you had degenerative joint conditions. And after that, he was very open to everything that happened the rest of the session. And again, it's not just the words, but it's something about this quantum field. This person lives 3,000 miles away from me at least, and we had just been talking for 10 minutes the first time we'd ever met. But somehow that field that we were in allowed a simple shift of attitude to immediately change what was going on, what seemed like very serious thing in his physical body. Another story, I just got this today. There's a woman who has been a client of mine for a while, and this woman had a very difficult childhood because she was born very sensitive and open, intuitive, and a very kind of angelic kind of person. And when she was growing up, her mother was always telling her that this was really bad and wrong and criticizing her sharply for ever saying anything about intuition or seeing fairies or whatever that she was talking about. So she grew up feeling like she had to hide that part of her away. And so she came to me because she felt like she really wanted to bring this part of her out, but she felt it was so locked away she didn't know how to do it. So we've had a series of sessions over a couple of years, maybe once every 3 or 4 months. And after a few of those sessions, she realized that she felt comfortable and safe now to share these gifts because she took back the power from her mother, released some of the energies in her of negative agreement and vow and some of these things that had to be released. So she just sent me this today because she said that The first client that she saw once she went into becoming a healer, when she felt permission to do that, had this experience, which I'll read to you. She said, "I want to share with you the first healing I did after being your client. My client was a woman in her early 30s who had had depression and suicidal thoughts since she was 12. She had been to many psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists to no avail, so she decided to try an alternative form of healing. After the usual intake, we began our session, and I believe this was a remote session over Zoom, as far as I know. And during the session, a strong quantum field formed, and I could feel the quantum energy spiraling between my client and I. It almost seemed out of time. I could sense that she was deeply affected by the field and immersed in light. When the session ended, my client stared in amazement and shook her head. She indicated that she had experienced something life-changing. After our session, she began to meditate and became interested in spirituality. Her depression was gone. I saw her a couple more times to make sure the healing had stuck. She said that she now sees that her depression had been a faulty way or untrue story of looking at the world. I, as a healer, just held the quantum field. The quantum field did the healing." That was her very first client when she decided she was ready to become a healer. Talk about beginner's luck. Of course, it's not luck, but it's something that would encourage you to want to do more. I was remembering how when I was an acupuncturist, which is many decades, and then working with microcurrent, and I still do work with microcurrent, but when that was my main work, I had a certain built-in anxiety about clinical practice because I just wasn't sure I could produce the results. I was good at what I did, and I did help a lot of people, but some people would come who had convoluted, difficult issues, and I actually did not help them that much. And that really weighed heavily on me. And I think it does on most people who are doing this kind of work, because if you're a holistic healer or you're doing any kind of energy healing, you usually get people coming to you who say, "You are my last resort. I've already tried all these other doctors and chiropractor and acupuncture and psychology and whatever it is. And I'm still having this depression. I'm still having this chronic back pain. I'm still having my migraines," or whatever it is. And then, I'm coming to you because you're probably, if you can't help me, nobody can. So I've had that pressure on me so many times. And many times I was able to help them. Many times I wasn't. And that feels really crappy. I mean, somebody puts all their faith in you after being disappointed so many times. What's shifted for me, I'd say over the last maybe a year and a half, 2 years, is that I have no anxiety at all about clinical practice anymore. There's just this serenity I have that I guess maybe I feel like I'm not responsible. I know this field, this quantum field, is doing the work, just like that woman said in that thing she wrote up. And also, I can't even remember anybody I've worked with in a long time that didn't have a positive experience, usually a significantly positive experience. And I'm not saying that to brag, like, look what a great healer I am. It's something about the fact that they are the healer. The master healer is a consciousness. It's a part of, I believe the master healer is a universal attribute of the universe. And we learn to, in a sense, attune ourselves to it. And if we're helping other people, if you have this, a lot of it's about trust. Like if you attune yourself to the master healer, which basically means you just trust that it's there and you don't take it personally. Like I personally have to, my individual mind has to come up with the right answer for this person. By trusting that that master healer essence is there and that it's really doing the work, then when I work with people, I just trust if that person has been referred to me or this person's drawn to me, I believe I can help them. But what I do as an insurance policy is when people are interested in working with me, I usually talk to them on the phone first. And while I'm talking to them, I do what's called a body pendulum. Is that I found that my body gives me a yes answer by swinging forward and a no answer by swinging backward or to the side. So silently, while I'm listening to them tell me what their needs are, I just ask, is it appropriate for me to work with this person? And is it highly likely that I can help them? And if I get that yes, then I go ahead and encourage them to set up a session if they're interested. And it usually is a yes. But there's occasionally I've gotten a no. like that body saying, no, this person is not really the right client for you. And in those cases, I'll usually refer them to someone else, or they don't even seem interested. They decide not to do it on their own anyway. So with that little insurance policy, it's just been very different. It's just such a joyful thing now. Because I just know that when I'm with those people in those clinical sessions, whether it's on Zoom or at my office in person, everything I need to think just pops in my mind, and everything I need to see just comes into my vision. And whatever energies that person needs are just there. And I feel like I'm really in a partnership with that person orchestrating that healing session. So that feels a whole lot better than it used to, I'll tell you that for sure. The other thing is that I used to, because I was in a microcurrent teaching business, I was brought a lot of people with very severe chronic pain who had already been through the ringer on years and years of pain and trying so many kinds of treatments, medical and alternative, and they really weren't getting out of pain permanently. It was they didn't want to stay addicted to opiate drugs, and those were the ones I had a lot of trouble with back in those days. Some of them what their issues were so convoluted and so difficult, and they had so many physical things in their body that were impinging on the nerves or were degenerated, that it just seemed like, how can I help these people? And a lot of times I couldn't. What I've learned that people with severe chronic pain, it's really not about the physical. I mean, on one level it is, they have physical changes in their body, but that it has so much to do with their beliefs and the trauma that they are still holding on to and perpetuating from the past that's running in their subconscious mind. And we can call samskara or residue or conditioning. There's many names like that. And that now when those people come in, I just immediately start working with them on the real causes of why they're in pain. And it's remarkable because a lot of times I don't have to do that much of the physical work on their joints or on their back or whatever it is, because so much of it clears up by addressing these things that have been invisible to them, they haven't even seen, that have to do with just what they've been carrying, the programming they're carrying. But then it is really helpful to do the physical things. A lot of times, a certain amount of microcurrent or acupuncture or body work or helping them to do more exercise, makes a giant difference. I'll just tell one more brief story, because there's so many of these stories. There's a woman who's actually a good friend of mine who's in her mid-80s, and she was talking about having hip problems and was thinking she had to go get a hip replacement, because so many women at that age often have had to do that, and some men also. We did one session a few days ago on the phone, just as a quickie 15-minute session. And she hasn't been able to walk that much because of her hip issues. So we talked, and I checked her chakras and found that her second chakra in the lower abdomen was closed. And we quickly discovered that there is a kind of consciousness sitting in her second chakra that was saying, I really want to slow down. I don't want to have to do very much anymore. Because this woman had a huge career. She used to be a very well-known spiritual teacher. Hundreds or thousands of people that she worked with over many decades. And, so she has had a very big life. And so I think that this part of her is basically saying, I'm kind of done with that. I want to slow down. I don't want to really do so much. So that part basically was withdrawing some of the energy from her hips so she couldn't move forward and continue to do so much. So once we understood that, we actually worked out a negotiation between her second chakra and her so that it would give her enough energy, but she was totally agreeing, I'm going to slow down and I'm not going to be doing so much activity anymore. And guess what? The next day when she went walking, her pain was significantly decreased in her hip, which is unusual, because usually when somebody, especially at that age, when somebody starts getting hip degeneration or hip issues, it's not often that easy to correct it like that. So I'm telling you these stories because they're emblematic of this miraculous quantum field that we are living in. And I'm so grateful I am a healer because I get to experience these things, which helps me believe that this is real. So it just helps me to change my attitude about life and not take myself 2 seriously, 3 seriously, and 4 seriously. And I'd like to just, before we close here today, is have a few moments of planetary healing that we can do together. So I'd like to ask whoever's here to join me in this, if you would. Just think of what you feel concerned about in the world. Like, is there anything that you feel strongly about that really needs more justice brought, more truth, more accountability, more compassion, more fairness, whatever the thing is, or more urgent action? Just take that and just put it into the space. Like, imagine there's this altar that we're all sitting in front of. Just put it on the altar, that thing that you want to see, it that needs to be addressed for the human race to be really, everybody in the human race to be brought into this ascension consciously. And I am claiming to stand with Team Light. That is all the light workers on the planet who are committed to this higher path, to purifying themselves and to elevating themselves and to helping others to become free. And then there's many light workers that are not humans. They're called ascended masters or the galactic council or archangels or things that we don't have no idea of. But anybody on any level who's truly part of the light and is part of this ascension of the earth and helping us make it through this time where there have been so many threats to our survival. I'm calling on all of them, like that joining with them, this unified field of power. My suggestion is invoke your own transmission. Like, what is that emanation that you bring from source? Whether you intellectually know what it is or not, doesn't matter. If you just simply say, whatever my highest source is, the highest light that I am, I call that forth to serve right now, to express in this planetary healing. So I'm calling upon, invoking my transmission, which I call the crystal treasure, joining with all these other light workers as one, where really other is even a dualistic word. That's just this force of oneness in the universe, of coherence and of healing, the master healer, the true master healer. And I'm just visualizing that in front of me there's a globe of the earth just hanging out in space in front of me, in front of us. And that this earth is now sitting in this huge pillar of light of the combined transmissions that we're all bringing to this, that all the light workers are bringing. And I am seeing this pillar of light awakening, healing, liberating, releasing people from the dark dreams that they've been caught up in, releasing me from whatever remaining dark dreams I've been caught up in. All of us. Just like when you wake up from a nightmare, you go, oh my God, I'm so glad it was just a dream. I'm here and safe in my bed. I'm invoking that experience for the whole human race. And the opening of the heart, where we just see we need to stop being in conflict and denial and tribalism and male patriarchy and all, and just simply roll up our sleeves and get busy repairing this planet, repairing our civilization. And I call upon the goddess of justice, of liberty, freedom, truth, disclosure, compassion, supply, to bring your powerful presence to every human on this planet, to help us more quickly release the bonds of ignorance that we've been living in, and to also bring divine power to prevent people from perpetrating against each other, that they need to face themselves and deal with their own shadow. And those who have been perpetrated, who have been against, that they find their power to refuse to participate in that either. And one thing I know is that it doesn't have to take a lot of time. To participate in planetary healing doesn't have to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It can be 1 minute. The time doesn't really matter. It's simply just the intention that you're there and that you put it out.